Right now, at the edge of my garden here in Okinawa, there stands a wooden fence post that my grandfather set into the ground before I was born. I am 81 years old. That post has stood through more than 80 typhoon seasons, through 80 summers of driving rain and 80 winters of damp. And if you walk out with me and push against it with all your weight, it will not move. It will not give. Pull it, and the earth will move before the wood does. The bottom of that post, the part buried in the wet ground, the part that rots away first on every fence you have ever owned, is as sound and as hard as the day he set it. He did one thing to that wood before he put it in the ground. One simple thing that cost him nothing, that took him an afternoon, and that the whole modern world has forgotten. And in a few minutes, I am going to show you exactly what it was. My name is Kenji Takara. I am 81 years old, and I have lived my whole life on the island of Okinawa, in the warm, wet south of Japan. And I will tell you plainly, there are few harder places on this earth to keep wood alive in the ground. The rain here is relentless. The air is thick with salt and damp. Wood that would last a decade in a dry country will rot to sponge here in 2 or 3 years, if you do not know what the old people knew. My family has built fences and barns and houses of wood on this island for more generations than anyone can count, and every one of them was raised by hand, with wood cut and treated the old way. My grandfather taught me when I was a boy that wood does not have to rot, that a fence post, treated correctly, can outlive the man who set it. And I have seen it with my own eyes, for I lean on the proof of it every morning. But before I show you how, I must tell you the part that should make you a little angry. Walk into any hardware store or lumber yard today and look at what they sell you. Fence posts soaked in green or brown chemical promise to last up to 15 years, and they do not even last that. Bags of concrete to set them in, which I will tell you later, is one of the very worst things you can do, though they will never say so. And when your fence rots and leans and falls in 3 or 4 years, as it surely will, you go back and you buy it all again. New posts, new concrete, new chemical. Do you see it? The short life of that fence is not a failure to them. It is the entire business. A fence that lasts 100 years is a disaster for a company that sells fence posts. There is no repeat customer in a thing that outlives you. So they do not sell you the wood that lasts, and they do not teach you the method that would make your cheap wood last, because either one would cost them every sale that comes after the first. Quick word before I begin, and I won't bring it up again. Everything I share here, there's far more of it than fits in one video, so I gathered it all into one book, The Takara Method. And right now I'm keeping it at a special price, lower than it'll normally be. The link's in the description, or point your phone at the code on screen. That's all. Now let me show you today's. Now here is where almost everyone goes wrong. And if you do not understand this one thing, your fence will rot no matter what wood you buy or what you paint on it. So listen closely. Most people believe a post rots evenly, all over, from the weather. So they slather the whole post in some sealant or paint, above the ground and below, and they think they have protected it. They have done the opposite. A fence post does not rot all over. It rots in one place, and one place only, the few inches right at the soil line, where the wood meets the ground. Right there, at that line, the wood has everything the rot needs. Water rising up from the wet earth, and air coming down from above. Water and air together at that one line. That is where every fence you have ever owned has failed. Right at the ground, snapping off while the top of the post is still sound. And here is the cruel part. When you seal a post all over with paint or plastic sealant, you trap moisture inside the wood, and you make the rot at that line even faster. You have sealed the water in. The secret my grandfather knew, the method used across old Japan for centuries on temples and farmhouses and fences that still stand today, does the exact opposite. You do not seal the wood. You change the wood itself at the surface into something the rot cannot eat, and you do it not with chemical, not with paint, but with fire. The method is called yakisugi, burnt cedar, and the first step will look, to your eyes, like you are destroying the very post you are trying to save. You take your fence post, and you burn it, deliberately, evenly, on purpose. You char the surface of the wood until it is blackened all the way around. This is the thing that stops people, that makes them think the old man has lost his senses. Why would you burn the very wood you wish to preserve? Because a thin layer of char is the finest natural protection wood has ever been given. When you burn the outer surface of the wood, you convert it into a hard, black shell of carbon, and carbon does not rot. The fungus that eats wood cannot eat charcoal. There is nothing in it left for the fungus to feed upon. The insects that bore into wood will not touch a charred surface. The water that soaks into raw wood runs off a burnt one. In one afternoon, with nothing but fire, you turn the soft, vulnerable outer skin of the post into an armor that rot and insect and water alike simply cannot pass. This is not a coating that will peel or wash away like paint. It is the wood itself, transformed. It is part of the post now, and it will guard it for 100 years. And I do not ask you to take only an old man's word for this. This method has a name that is centuries old, yakisugi. Some call it shosugiban, and you may see it with your own eyes on buildings all across Japan that have stood for 200, 300 years, their black timbers still sound, still standing, still turning away the rain. The fishermen of our coasts charred the hulls of their boats this way. The farmers charred the walls of their storehouses. It was never a decoration to them. Though it is beautiful, it was survival, the way a poor and practical people made humble wood outlast the wealthy man's stone. When the modern world came with its chemicals and its sealants, it did not improve upon this method. It only made people forget it, because you cannot sell a man a bottle of something he can do with a fire he already has. That is the only reason it was lost, not because it failed, because it worked too well and too cheaply for anyone to profit from it. Let me tell you exactly how to do it, for the method is simple, but the details are everything. First, your wood. Cedar is the traditional and the best, for it is naturally rich in oils that resist rot even before you burn it. But this method will strengthen almost any solid wood you have, even the humble pine from the lumber yard. Choose posts of solid heartwood if you can, the dense wood from the center of the tree, not the pale, soft sapwood near the bark, which rots far faster. A rough cedar post might cost you $15 or $20, a pine one far less. Either will serve, once burned. Second, the burn. You do not need any special tool, though a simple propane weed torch, the kind you can buy for $30 or $40, makes the work quick and even. In the old days, my grandfather did it over an open fire, turning the post slowly above the flames. What you are aiming for is to char the wood until the surface is blackened and cracks into a pattern like the skin of an alligator. The old craftsman called this the crocodile skin. You burn deeper on the bottom third of the post, the part that will go into the ground and just above it, for that is where the war against rot is truly fought. Char that section thoroughly, a good few millimeters deep, until it is crisp and black all the way around. The part of the post that stands in the open air above needs only a lighter char, or none at all if you prefer the look of the wood. Third, once it has cooled, you may brush the loose ash away with a stiff brush, and if you wish, you rub the charred wood with a natural oil. Linseed oil is traditional, or tung oil. This feeds the wood beneath the char and deepens the protection, and it gives that beautiful silver-black finish you see on the old Japanese buildings. This step is not strictly necessary for a buried fence post, but it is worth the small trouble, and a bottle of linseed oil is a few dollars and lasts for many posts. Now the setting of the post, and here is where I must save you from the greatest mistake of all, the one the stores will never warn you against. Do not set your post in concrete. I know they sell you the concrete right beside the posts. I know every instruction tells you to. But concrete is the enemy of a wooden post. Here is why. Concrete cracks always in time, and water seeps down into the tiny gap between the concrete and the wood, and there it sits, trapped against the post, with nowhere to drain, a permanent wet collar strangling your post at the very soil line where it is most vulnerable. A post set in concrete rots faster, not slower. Instead, do what my grandfather did. Dig your hole deep. A third of the post's length should be underground for a tall fence. Put a few inches of gravel at the very bottom, so that any water that reaches the base can drain away instead of pooling. Set your charred post on that gravel. Then backfill around it with more gravel and gravel-packed earth, tamping it down hard in layers with a stout stick as you go. This holds the post firm as stone, yet lets the water drain freely away, so the wood stays dry where it matters. Gravel and tamped earth, never concrete. Remember that one thing and you will double the life of any post you ever set. Now let me give you the layers that most people overlook, the small things that turn a good post into one that outlives you. The first, the top of the post. Water is patient, and it will find the end grain at the top of a post, the cut end, where the wood drinks water up like a straw, and it will rot the post from the top down if you let it. So never leave a post cut flat and open to the sky. Cut the top at a slant so the rain runs off it, or better still, cap it with a small piece of wood, a stone, or by charring the top end well and oiling it. My grandfather cut every post top on the slant, always facing away from the prevailing rain. A small thing, 100 small things, done right, are what make a fence that lasts a century. The second, keep the wood off the wet ground wherever you can. Where a rail meets a post, where board meets board. Arrange the wood so that water always runs down and off, never sits and pools in a joint. Rot needs standing water and time. Deny it the standing water, and you have won. The third and the deepest wisdom of all: repair, do not replace. A fence is not a thing you build once and forget. Once a year, walk your fence line slowly, as my grandfather walked his, with a keen eye and a hand to test each post. Where the char has worn thin, after many years, you may burn and oil it again. Where a board has cracked, you replace the one board, not the whole fence. A fence tended this way is not a thing that rots and is torn out and rebuilt every decade. It is a living boundary that you and your children keep, board by board, post by post, for 100 years and more. The store wants you to build and discard. The old way is to build and to keep. And let me give you one more thing to watch for it is the knowledge that separates the person who keeps a fence a century from the person who merely builds a good one and then neglects it. Learn to read the early signs of trouble before they become disaster. In the spring, press your thumb hard against the wood at the soil line of each post. Sound wood resists you. Wood that is beginning to soften will give a little, and that is your warning. That post needs attention now, a fresh char or a little digging out and drying, while it is still an easy fix and not a fallen fence. Watch where moss and dark green growth gather on the wood, for moss holds moisture against the grain and marks the damp places that will fail first. Scrape it away and let the sun and air reach the wood. Notice which posts sit in the low ground where the rain collects, and give those the deepest char and the best drainage, for they fight the hardest battle. A fence does not fail all at once. It gives you warning, quietly, for years before it falls, if only you know how to listen to it. My grandfather listened to his fence the way a doctor listens to a chest. That is why it still stands. Let me tell you about my grandfather, for he stands in every word of this, as surely as his post still stands in my garden. He was a quiet man and a patient one, and he did nothing quickly. I remember watching him as a boy, turning a long cedar post slowly over the fire. Hour upon hour it seemed to me then. His face lit orange by the flames, blackening the wood with a care that I did not understand. "Why do you burn it, Oji-san?" I asked him. "Why do you ruin the good wood?" And he smiled and said, "I am not ruining it. I am teaching it to live forever." I did not understand him then. I understand him now. He set that fence the year before I was born, and he has been gone from this world for 40 years, and still his fence stands, and still I lean upon it each morning and feel it hold. He built a thing that outlived him, and in doing so he is not entirely gone. A part of him still stands guard at the edge of my garden, holding back the world, keeping my vegetables safe, as sound as the day his hands set it in the earth. That is what it means to build a thing that lasts. You do not merely save yourself the cost of building it twice. You leave a piece of yourself behind, standing, useful, loved, and this is the whole of Matnai, the philosophy of my people and of every people who ever lived close to the land and could not afford to waste. It is not only that we do not waste the wood, though we do not. It is that we do not waste the work. To build a thing twice, 3 times, 4 times in a lifetime, because it was made to fail, that is the true waste, the waste of your days, your money, your labor, your one short life spent buying the same fence again and again. To build it once, correctly, with your own 2 hands and an afternoon of fire, and to have it serve your grandchildren, that is not only thrift, that is a kind of quiet immortality, available to any patient person with a post and a flame. We have been taught to live the other way, to buy the cheap thing, watch it fail, throw it away, and buy it again, and to call this normal, to keep the stores rich and our own hands empty of any skill. But there is another way, and it is older and wiser and within the reach of anyone willing to learn it. It asks a little more of you at the start. An afternoon, some care, the courage to put fire to wood, and it gives back for 100 years. There is a dignity in that. The dignity of a man or woman who can make a thing that lasts, who does not depend on the store for what their own 2 hands can do better, who leaves the world something standing instead of something in the landfill. So tell me, in the comments below, where in this world do you live, and what are you fighting to keep from rotting? A fence, a gate, a garden bed, the posts of a barn. Tell me your place, and what you are building or mending this year. I read every message that comes to me, and I would dearly love to know who among you sets a charred post this season that your grandchildren will one day lean upon. And the next time we sit together, I will show you the joint my grandfather used to join the rails to those posts, a way of locking wood into wood without a single nail or screw or drop of glue, that has held the great temples of Japan standing through 1,000 years of earthquakes that flattened everything of stone around them. It is simpler to cut than you would ever believe, and once you know it, you will never trust a nail again. Until then, waste nothing, build it to last, and remember always that the people who lived closest to the earth understood things that we, with all our chemicals and all our concrete and all our hurry, are only now beginning to remember once again.